You didn't wake up today feeling like yourself, did you? Maybe you opened your eyes and sensed that something was already missing. Not an object, not a person, something more subtle. A thin thread that used to tie you to the performance of being normal. And without that thread, every action feels unanchored, like you're moving through a reality that has forgotten your name. You're not broken. You're just standing in a field that no longer recognizes your old signature. That's why the conversations feel hollow, why the routines feel brittle, why your mind drifts to places that have no language. This is not depression. It's the dissolving of outdated architecture. The scaffolding that held up the old story of you is quietly collapsing, and it doesn't care if you're ready. Because readiness isn't what this phase asks of you. What it wants is honesty, the kind of honesty that admits you don't know how to pretend anymore. You don't need to label this unraveling. You don't need to call it an awakening or a breakdown or a transformation. Labels are too small for what's happening. What's happening is that your nervous system is dropping the armor it once needed to survive a reality that was never built for your wholeness. This is why you feel tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. Why you look around at your life, your plans, your relationships, your aspirations, and wonder who created them. Why you feel like a stranger to your own preferences, as if your soul is scanning everything you once said yes to and quietly whispering, no, not this, not anymore. And that quiet refusal is the most honest thing about you right now. Because even if you can't explain it, you can't ignore it. There is a part of you that no longer believes in the script you were handed. A part that is willing to stand in the hollow space between what you thought you needed and what is actually true. Stay here. Don't rush to fill the emptiness. Let the old agreements dissolve. Because something in you is finally brave enough to feel the void without immediately building a new prison to escape it. There is a strange relief in watching the walls crumble, a subtle, almost sacred liberation in realizing you no longer have the energy to maintain what never nourished you. You don't have to force yourself to participate in rituals that feel stale. You don't have to keep pretending that you believe in the same illusions everyone else is still clinging to. You're not better than anyone for feeling this shift, but you are more honest. And that honesty is expensive. It costs you every comfortable lie you once used to soothe your nervous system. It costs you the belonging you traded your truth for. It costs you the certainty that came from knowing exactly what role to play to avoid rejection. This is the hidden price of alignment. No one tells you that before the clarity comes, the collapse. Before the renewal comes, the erosion. Before the rebirth comes, the hollowing out of everything that once defined you. That's why you feel unanchored, why your focus drifts, why you find yourself staring at nothing for long stretches of time, listening for a signal that hasn't yet arrived. Because in this space between frequencies, your old momentum is gone, and the new current hasn't fully found you. And so, you hover. You wonder if something's wrong with you, if you're lazy or undisciplined or ungrateful. But you're none of those things. You're simply unhooking from a field that demanded your compliance and preparing to inhabit one that requires your integrity. Your fatigue is not failure. It's the consequence of carrying a false self for so long that your body has to recalibrate to remember what it feels like to be real. And that recalibration is not a weekend project. It's a season, a sacred slowing down, a dismantling that can't be rushed. You're not lost. You're in transit between the echo of an old identity and the resonance of the truth that's been waiting beneath it all along. Some days it feels like you're dissolving from the inside out, as if all the scaffolding that held you upright is disintegrating in the silence. You try to explain it to people, but they look at you with polite confusion. How do you describe this hollowing to someone who still believes the architecture of their identity is unshakable? You can't, and you're not meant to, because this is not a collective experience, at least not yet. This is an intimate, personal exodus from the contracts you signed unconsciously. The vows to stay small, to stay agreeable, to stay entangled in expectations you never questioned. This is why you feel both terrified and relieved. You're grieving a version of yourself that was never truly you, but that version was still familiar. It was still a home, even if it was built on shaky foundations. And when you walk away from something that once defined you, It doesn't matter how much it hurt to stay. There will be an ache in the absence, a tenderness in the spaces you once filled with performance. This is the heartbreak no one warns you about, the heartbreak of watching your old life fade without a script for what comes next. But this space, as barren as it feels, is fertile. It is the field where the roots of your real self can finally take hold. Not the self that was shaped by trauma or by survival or by the desperate need to be chosen, but the self that existed before you learned to fracture to fit in. This is why you can't rush to rebuild, because anything constructed too quickly will be a replica of the old pattern. And you didn't come this far to recreate the same prison with prettier walls. So you wait, you breathe, you let the stillness work you open. Because in the quiet, you'll finally hear the parts of yourself you abandoned calling you back. And this time, you will not ignore them. When the old identity collapses, the mind panics. It scrambles to find anything familiar to cling to, a role, a label, a goal, a conflict. It doesn't matter if those things were never true. What matters is that they felt stable. And in this void, even illusions can feel safer than the unknown. But you can't go back to pretending. You've tasted too much reality. You've seen behind the curtain of your own adaptations. You know exactly what it costs to abandon yourself for the comfort of others. And now you're paying a different price. The disorientation that comes when you no longer agree to compromise. You'll notice it in small moments. You walk into rooms that used to hold your energy and feel nothing. You try to pick up old dreams, only to find them limp and lifeless in your hands. You listen to the same music, eat the same food, read the same affirmations, and none of it lands. This is not because you've lost your spark. It's because you've outgrown the container that once held it. Think of it this way. Your nervous system learned to feel safe in patterns, even the ones that harmed you. It became addicted to the chemical cocktail of proving, performing, and pleasing. That addiction doesn't dissolve overnight. It dissolves when you stop feeding it with your attention. And that means sitting in the quiet of your own unstructured presence. It means allowing your body to detox from the adrenaline of perpetual becoming. It means listening to the raw ache of emptiness without rushing to fill it. Because when you no longer measure your worth by your output, your healing can finally take root. This is the moment you've been circling for lifetimes. The threshold where you stop negotiating your truth for approval, where you let the old identities die without embalming them in nostalgia. And in the silence that follows, you will feel something holy, a life that is yours alone, waiting patiently to be lived. This is the phase where your nervous system rebels against every old contract you signed in desperation. You'll feel it as exhaustion that doesn't respond to rest, as waves of emotion with no clear source, as a strange clarity that flickers in and out. One moment you're sure, the next you're untethered. Don't mistake this for regression. This is recalibration. You are dissolving the architecture that made you digestible to others. You're unlearning the reflex to shrink so no one feels threatened by your wholeness. You're releasing the need to explain your decisions to people who never understood your frequency to begin with. And because you're no longer performing, the field around you is adjusting too. Some relationships will drift, some roles will fade, some invitations will stop arriving. It will feel like loss. It will feel like failure. It will feel like proof that you've somehow ruined your life. But all that's happening is alignment. You're shedding anything that required you to abandon your integrity. You're stepping out of dynamics where your power was currency for connection. It's disorienting because the old self would have called this collapse. But the real you knows it as freedom. Remember, the spaces that empty when you reclaim your resonance are not meant to be refilled immediately. Let them stay vacant. Let the echo ring out. Let the truth of your new frequency gather substance before you try to name it. This is how you become unrecognizable to the old paradigm, by no longer needing to be understood by it. Because the more you honor the pull into stillness, the more life begins to reorganize around your authenticity. Not your effort, not your performance. Just the quiet power of your honest presence. And the day will come when you wake up and realize you no longer miss who you had to be to survive. You only grieve that you ever thought you had to become them in the first place. And here In the aftermath of everything you've surrendered, you find yourself staring into the blank canvas of your own becoming. It feels unsettling because there is no script to follow, no blueprint to cling to, no external validation to confirm you're doing this right. You will be tempted to rebuild something, anything, to feel certain again. But hear this clearly: certainty is not the goal of this passage. Presence is. Presence so thorough, so honest, that it dissolves every distortion you once clung to for safety. Presence that doesn't flinch when nothing makes sense. Presence that doesn't rush to define what's emerging. Because what's emerging can't be measured by old metrics. It doesn't fit into the timelines you thought you were behind on. It doesn't respond to the urgency that once drove you to perform, achieve, or appease. It grows in the quiet, in the spaces you don't fill, in the pauses you don't interrupt, in the moments you allow yourself to simply exist without justification. This is the territory of resonance, where the only compass is the feeling in your body when something is true. And truth isn't always comfortable. It often feels like a soft ache, a stretching in your chest, a wild relief that comes with no guarantees. If you've reached this point, you're already living the transformation most people only talk about. You're embodying the shift that can't be captured in language or strategy. You are the evidence that it's possible to dismantle a life built on survival and step, unsteadily, imperfectly, into one built on sovereignty. So if today feels heavy, if you feel like nothing is solid, remember, this is not a sign that you're lost. This is the initiation into a deeper coherence. It's not your job to force clarity. It's your task to stay open long enough for clarity to find you. And when it does, you'll know. Not because someone else confirms it, not because you finally feel safe, but because your body will exhale in a way it never has before. In that moment, you'll realize nothing was falling apart. It was all falling into alignment.